Good evening. Today we're picking up where we left off on Friday. I have slightly forgotten how to play this game, but I mean, that's just normal. Oh, congratulations, Urian, on being first. Also, this is way too loud. Let me turn the volume down in my headset. Ow. This is fine. Now, if memory serves, there was like... There was a thing that I was gonna do, but I forget. I'm sure I'll figure it out. No, my child. Hold up, I... Actually saves coming. Yeah, I think that there was like a quest I was gonna do. I just didn't have time to start it last Friday. So I haven't explored to the right. I've explored a bit below, which I think is gonna be where the quest was. This feels familiar. You still have not finished your quest, come back as soon as you finish it. I wonder if these guys are vulnerable. Oh no. I wonder if these guys are vulnerable to fire, or if they're like immune to it. Alright, outright immune. I'd have expected that. Nope. Frog lives. I got the frog out in time, don't worry. They appear to have burst into flames. This might take a minute. Luckily, I do have plenty of arrows. This would probably be like a million times easier with, like, the frost spell. But I don't believe I have that yet. The goodness is, this should get substantially easier and faster as helmets start to die, because I'll have fewer incoming attacks to worry about. I'll have to spend less time running for cover. Don't I have a couple of rings that, like, increase bow damage? May as well use those. Oh yeah, plus 9 damage with bows. Static bonuses like that are great when you've got, like, a low... when you got, like, a low, when your numbers are small, adding numbers to the list is good. And my bow numbers are small. That's what we're talking about. Poor decisions were made. I got greedy. This is fine though, it was a learning moment. Do I have any armor that synergizes with bows at all? Oh, yes I do. Excellent. I might not have my own stats, but I can certainly borrow some. Play with the chatbot. I did get tagged, but I can take one. I kind of wish that I could see the hit points of, like, random enemies the same way I can of bosses. Just like give me a little indicator for whoever I most recently hit. Shoot. Mistakes were made. This is fine. No consequences. Truly. This is the gameplay that we all tune in for. I do feel like it's speeding up at least. Oh dear. Normally I'd be like, what if I need it more later, but I would rather save time. Yeah, safe spotting. Angle on that one's a little bit funky. I did not do that right. Alright, no idea. I got like bajillion of these ones of Frostbolt. I just need level 2 wands for that. I already know that my build is a little bit suboptimal, so like... Okay, yeah, that is... substantially better. These aren't even in the same time zone. Okay. Yeah, that was a remarkably different experience. Thank you for the head pats. I appreciate them very much. Rip. They're still alive. Not anymore. How does one... Do I hit this with Frost too? Hold on, what was the actual quest? Stranger Quick, I need your help. What's up? The forces of the Eternal Fire have captured Coldax. They're trying to melt him. Melt him? Who is Coldax? The last of the ice elementals in this castle, you must prevent his extinction. An ice elemental? Okay, where is he? What can I do? They took him through that door. He must be in there. They must be trying to kill him. I'm also gonna need some blue magic essence to cast the freezing spells to heal him. So I guess I found the guy and now I go back and I... Tell what's his face to heal Coldax? No, I did give him the, I wanted to give him the essence, but it was just like, oh, you can't come back until the quest is done. Yeah, you have not finished your quest. Come back as soon as you finish it. Unless I have to, like, drag the essence onto him or something like that. Yeah, it says, basically, retrieve dying Coldax. So I presume that I have to, like, get the guy out of the pot and then also give the guy the essence? Somehow? Yeah, I didn't want to give him the essence at the time. I want to give it to him now. Here we are. There we go, dying Coldax. Here he is. I found him in a boiling cauldron. They tried to melt Coldax slowly. What a horrible torture. This elemental is rather small, you know? I imagine a 15-foot tall creature. He was much bigger, but he lost too much essence inside that cauldron. I'm going to see if I can save him. Orashe kolda marakek. Sotko dol terakas. It worked. It looks like he's recovered some strength, though he'll never be the same. Stranger, may I ask you a final favor? Yes, of course. What is it? Take him with you. He is too weak to face the dangers of this place on his own. But with you, he will have a better chance who can help you, especially against the forces of the Eternal Fire. Frost is directly opposed to fire. A frost attack will extinguish a burning creature, and vice versa. A fire attack will melt any frost that slows a creature. Hey, new pet. I like how it's just called Ice. Does he attack generically, or does he just extinguish burning things? Ooh, he attacks generically. Awesome. I can work with this. Mistakes have been made. Release me. Beaches and water, no swimming. Alright, I must be missing. Oh no. I'm missing just one fern. I am also going to have to look into making space for my inventory sooner rather than later. Nope. No, he does shoot the snakes, I just wasn't up there long enough for him to target them. This is fine. I just need one more fern. Oh. I should probably take a stop by some, by a shop of some description. Offload some of this gear that I'm just never gonna use. Hey, pros and nerds. Yeah, not gonna lie, this thing's really good. Or at least that's how it feels. Right, I still need to find one more fern for the other thing. Pep is just like, I'll show you how it's done. I still despise leeches. Oh, there's the last friend that I need. This is fine. I'm missing at least one lamp. Yeah. Not sure what that was. Okay, so there are more than the bare minimum number of ferns required. Good to know. So it will target the snake things, it just can't hurt them. I'll just wait for it to get closer so I can jump out and hit it with an axe a bunch of times. Yeah, just did that thing again. Weird. Is that the coral crown? Yes, it is. Leeches in water, no swimming. That sign can't stop me because I can't read. Not gonna lie, really enjoying having this thing alone. I've always enjoyed playing like any sort of summoner. Or like necromancer, or like any kind of build where I can just sort of like sit back and let somebody else do all the DPS. Jigsaw, thank you for the headpants. You could call it princess-like. Yeah, sadly, very few games do that. Probably because, like, it can be hard to make that sort of gameplay compelling. but whenever a game gives it a shot, I appreciate it. Keep forgetting that that's there. Yeah, not gonna lie, this pet does feel kind of insane. Like, as long as I don't let it get killed, it just keeps going. I am very on board with this. I lost track of where I wanted to be. Whoops. I actually want to go to the other gate. Yeah, this one. Seems like there's also a shop along the way, so that'll be nice. Perfect, perfect. Now I can make tea. Many thanks, stranger. May luck be with you. Ahem, aren't you forgetting something? Forgetting what? My coins? Coins? What coins? I do not remember. You don't? Maybe a couple of slaps will remind you. Ah, yes, now I remember. Here, you have coins. Yeah, good enough. I need a trident and one more piece of statue. You're still waiting to see a game that lets you place a centaur that isn't turn-based, or otherwise doesn't let you run around? I don't want to know what the uncensored version of that dialogue was. Probably not. Alright, let's see if we can't pass off a few of the things here. Makes sense that a mostly discharged wand would be worth way less. Ye auto sword. I could probably just drop the fern. I could probably also drop the wood. I presume I don't need them for anything else. I'm just gonna assume that anything that isn't at least uncommon, I can just kind of disregard entirely. Except for that bow, because it's my only bow. And those wands, because they're limited use. That'll do for now. part of me thinks that I should get more spells. That is a lot of coins, but like, what if I need more later? And these teleport items, I've got the halo, and it's right next to a gate. Oh no, I got blamed. In hindsight, I really should have just cast fire magic. I should probably go patch myself up after that one. I'm also missing just one bit of statue, so it might be worth my time to go poke around looking for that. There's only so many places. There's only so many places it could be, and it's probably above the sewers. So. Ah yes, the classic RPG staple, the room filled with crows. I wonder, am I actually getting experience for all of those? I think I'm missing like... Well, I know that I'm missing like one statue, but like... Where might it be? I always try to take quest givers at face value. Like, even if the quest is a scam, it's still like a quest out of the log. Unless it's like a situation where like I've got branching paths and I can like choose which one I want to follow. Granted, I suppose stab the quest giver in the face is always an option. It looks like this section also extends upwards a little bit, so... I might find the last bit of statue upwards. Plus you can kill a satyr along the way and that's just a bonus. I do not have the key to the catacombs. Oh, the Java yoinked the arrow that was on the ground that I didn't spot. That's fine, I don't care too much about that. What obstacles? They say that this elemental wouldn't be strong enough to traverse the castle on its own, but I really feel like it would be. $25 coins, we take those. That said, I'm pretty sure I've now checked every room that could have had statue pieces in it. Unless I just overlooked one without noticing, which could happen. Or like maybe this one in here? Probably not. I'm just gonna assume not. Incidentally, I had a funny thing happen to me earlier today. So, I have a controller, you know, for games, as a controller usually tends to be. And the other day, playing casually, one of the triggers on it broke. And it's like, oh, that's unfortunate. I will contact, like, the customer service of the company that made it and, like, you know, see what my options are. And they're sending me a whole new one, so like that's super cool of them. But I realized that I accidentally flexed when I was like making the video showing the issue. Because the game that I pulled up to kind of like demonstrate the issue was Hollow Knight. So I was just zipping around in Hollow Knight where that save file had been left, which was in God Home. And like as I was demonstrating how my character was uncontrollably zipping around, I just happened to land right between the statues of Pure Vessel and Nightmare King Grim, both with a radiant metal on them. And it's like, I didn't do it on purpose, but I did kind of flex there. There you are. It's like, behold what the lack of trigger is holding me back from doing. Great deeds like this. Alright, I just need the trident, which... I remember this one being a really long one. Goblins kept them stored in big chests with hope of using them in battle. So presumably like a goblin treasure room type deal. Yeah, no, like, no complaints with the customer service. They validated that it was like a legit order. That I got it from like a proper retailer. And they're not even asking to build one back, they're just like, hey, where do you want us to send the replacement? Like, zero complaints about the way that they're handling it. It is kind of fun to imagine that, like, I aura farmed a customer service person. But in reality, the reason that I went with them in the first place, one of the reasons was that I heard they had really good customer service, so... They probably would have done the same for anybody. Or at least anybody in a similar predicament. Seems less sturdy than the front for them. To be fair, it's not really taking damage. Unless you mean like in terms of like damage output. In which case, yes, very much so. If the enemy isn't like resistant to frost, this thing just messes it up. The frog was nice, but it specifically only targeted things like crows and bats. This thing will throw hits with anybody. Goblin treasure chests. Honestly, I kind of love this thing for dealing with those things alone. The annoying little paralyzing things. This feels like where I might want to be, roughly. Can we take those? Never mind, we can't take those. Which is more evidence that I should probably drop the burns that are in my inventory. The thought of having to like detach a leech from my body is just repulsive on every level to me. The closest thing to that I've ever had to do was I once ended up with a tick, like, dug into my skin. And, that was also utterly repulsive. Like, never again, please and thank you. Goblin treasure. Hello? This is new. Hey, it looks like a medieval version of a Stargate. I wonder where it goes. It's a portal to a fabulous place. Whoever crosses this portal becomes a king and any desire is fulfilled nearly instantaneously. From the most succulent delicacies to the most beautiful women. Yeah, of course. So, you wanted to go into this thing. Who knows what horrendous death waits at the other side? I see that you still take me for an idiot. By no means. I was just answering your question. Well, I'm definitely not going. Although, wait a minute. You know that I know you want me dead. Therefore, you know that I should never trust you if something very tempting comes up, since it'll be a trap. If you really don't want to go through that portal, you should just say the opposite, right? You encouraged me to go, so I should refuse. You know, sir, you've been very kind to inform me that water's on the other side of this portal. Yes, I'm going to enter it, because I trust you. No! No? Why not? You just told me that there's a fabulous place on the other side. Are you trying to be clever? Do not go into that portal or you'll die. Is that right? Isn't this just what you want? Me to die so you can be free? What are you hiding, Zira? What's out there that you don't want me to see? Ah, this portal leads to the depths of the mountain where Draconius lives, the second of the Great Guardians. Isn't that better for you? If Draconius kills me, the echo of your last will resonate all around the castle. You're worried that I would kill him, aren't you? You already saw how I handled the little sandworm from Arrakis, and once again you are mistaken. If you fall here, in the castle, I will be free again. But if you find death out there, I will never return. So that's the reason. You're afraid of being trapped in the depths of the mountain for all eternity. Okay then, now you have a good reason to help me as much as you can. Start talking, because I'm crossing through that portal right now. Crazy fool, the portal is one way. Once you cross it, you will not be able to return, so you must use another method like teleportation. Okay, what else? The depths are an inferno with lava that kills on contact. Both the great Draconius and creatures that dwell there are invulnerable to fire but weak against cold. Use the magic of frost against them as much as you can. Moreover, bring many healing potions and have them ready. Do not hesitate to use them, and try to keep yourself uninjured. Wow, Zira, you're really helpful when you want to be. Your master's very lucky to have you as a servant. Thanks for the advice, and don't worry, I don't want to die. I will come back here with ice magic. Like, I'll get the pet, but I want my own. Speaking of pets, kill my child. Or get poisoned, your choice. Swallow of the Nation. Ring of the Butcher. Damage with axes, we take those. Lights all torches and lamps in the room. Nice. Thanks for the tip. Okay, so there's some kind of like goblin treasure vault that I need to find, I guess. first thought is the one that was like in the mines, but that's in the mines, not in the sewers, so... I question whether or not that could be it. Looks like there's something up there. And there's also stuff over here. Did I miss a lamp somewhere? Or is it in that upper right corner? Goblin treasure. Are there even any goblins in the sewers, actually, come to think of it? I think most of them are in, like, the grave pits up top. In which case, I should probably actually go... here and to the right. I keep forgetting that that's there. Yeah, this feels like the sort of place that would be called the Goblin Treasure Room. It's got that energy. Hi. I will say, it's kind of amazing how much confidence it gives you having somebody along for the ride who's got a loaded gun, more or less. Broad dagger. Also inflicts extra damage against orcs. Elven ear. They are kept as trophies of battle against elves and could be sold for some coins. That is a large treasure chest. And there's the trident. It's actually got incredible damage. But it also requires like a really high polearm level. I guess the cheeky thing to do, if you, like, don't have any interest in frost magic, is to just not do that quest and keep the trident. This feels like a location. We're gonna take a 5-minute break here. Please use this time to refill your beverage, go to the bathroom. Anything that would take you about 5 minutes. I will see you shortly. I return. Okay. This is mine. You've lit all the lights from the downs. Next, restrain the blacksmith. Let me speed up. Scroll the faux mastery. Oh, also during the break, OG Avatar got redeemed. Behold my original form. A little bit of trivia, actually kind of concerning that. The original file for this avatar was lost. Like, the actual avatar itself, ended up essentially, like, ceasing to exist when a SSD failed. But I actually found the Vroid Studio file that I used to make it, so I was able to, like, recreate it. But it's technically not the original file. My statue is finally complete. Shadow, you have demonstrated your worth with the knowledge of power over water and ice. From now on, your eyes will understand the books of blue magic that are spread all around the castle. Magic of Frost has been added to your character page. You're now able to cast spells of Frost and increase your skill in Frost magic when gaining levels. Excellent. I suppose I'll just put that over my fire stuff for now. I should probably also pick up a blue staff while I'm at it. Means aside, I do have quite a lot of money. There's level 3 in the staves, that's okay. And these are all fire wizard robes, so they're not gonna help me here. Staves. There's a decent block on it as well. I also see that I've got multiple pages of shortcuts, so it might behoove me to set those up properly at some point. Especially if I'm going to be bringing like a wide variety of spells to bear. Hopefully I find like a staff of all elements so I don't have to swap those out all the time. Ooh, ominous. I wonder, does the staff itself deal normal damage or frost damage? I presume normal damage. Uh-oh. About halfway down, I realized I'd made a mistake. This is fine. You said magma hot, but like, my first thought was, is this a ligma? Like, oh, I'm in a volcano, looking at magma. And it's like, wait, isn't magma like subterranean and then like volcanoes have lava rather than magma? And then magma balls. Like the ligma lies in the inaccuracy. That was almost the rudest possible way to die here. Also, I noticed that my health is, like, below half. I feel like I could do better. There we go. That's better. As is that. Well, they drop a lot of essence, wow. I suppose it makes sense. Just casually bullying Cold Axe. Something about this game really makes me want to replay Skyrim. I think it's like seeing the main character, like, using an axe to hit people. And being like, wow. I miss hitting people with swords and axes. Though in Skyrim, I run into the problem where, like, I'm genuinely, like, too well versed in the game. Like, there's basically nothing in that game that's like a mystery to me anymore. At least without mods being involved. So like, if I don't actively find some way to nerf myself, I just end up following the exact same route every time. I start the game, I take a cart up to, Solitude. I climb around the mountain to get the Steed Stone, because it's kind of insanely OP, actually. I trek across the northern edge of Skyrim. Can't remember what it's called, but there's a Silver Hand. I think they're called the Silver Hand. There's a self-action event, it's from the Companion's Questline that use silver swords. And they have, like, an outpost along that route, so I drop by there and I get a silver sword. Because silver has the same base stats as steel, but actually gets a unlisted damage boost up to Daedric if you're fighting undead, which like everything in Skyrim is. And then I go into Ironbind Barrow, and I get the Steel Battle Axe of Fiery Souls, which has the unique Fiery Soul Trap enchantment. Then I go get the Black Star, capture a Grand Soul, and use that to enchant the Silver Sword with a Fiery Soul Trap 1 second. Wait, what's up? Before invoking Draconius, let me give you some advice. Scared, are you? What can you tell me? The force of his attacks will make you fall back, so you must avoid being near the edges to avoid falling to the bottom. Seek refuge from his fire under a solid roof, and do not hesitate to use healing potions to heal any burns. Moreover, Draconius always attacks from the air, so use frost magic or a bow against him. And most importantly, if your life is in danger, teleport yourself to the castle. Wow, Zira, thanks for all this advice. I don't want to die. I think they're ugly. I'll teleport back. And now, go, go, go. Got my staff here. Don't have a lot of healing potions. But I suppose a boss fight is as good a place as any to use them. Not gonna lie, that looks really cool. Oh, my bones? Oh wait, no, that was Cold Axe. Cold Axe's bones. I never thought I would feel bad for a dragon, holy crap. I didn't even need to drink any of those potions. I just showed up, cracked my knuckles, and then cracked his spine. Have you checked out Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon? I have not, but I think I've seen that game around. Let me copy the name of that. I'll check that out later. You know, that poor dragon. To the gardens. I still love that achievement unlock thing. Okay, where might the gardens be? I think they were... Were they up top? Let's find out. I think they were up top. Don't mind me, I'm just fine. That's the library. Memory serves that one's catacombs. The one that's like 3 down and 2 left. Garden. Where was Garden? There's a room up to the right there that I just haven't lit up. So maybe it's over that. that is also library. I'm pretty sure that one down there is catacombs, but I'll double check, just in case. It wouldn't do to assume and then be wrong. You know, this one's catacombs. Garden. Maybe to the north of this one over here? I presume that was gardens. Zira, how often do you possess people? Every time somebody dares enter the east entrance, I possess him, then lead him to his death. Yeah, I already know that. But how often does this happen? Every day? Every 2 days? Every few years. And that's it? To reach this castle is a hard task for the simple mortals of this world. Then, when nothing's going on, what do you normally do? Stay alert. For years? You should take up a hobby. A distraction would keep me from my vigil. How boring. I'm sure that you cheer up when somebody arrives. Why should I cheer up? Because it gives you something to do. You know, bring some action to a boring and monotonous existence. It is possible that I feel some satisfaction when I slay an intruder. You see, it shows you like action, dude. I'm sure you're getting a kick out of being trapped in my body, so you have an excuse to visit the whole castle and get some action. Refuses to respond. Hi. That other satyr did nothing wrong, it was just on sight from Cold Axe. Extra damage with light, 10%. Also just the base damage is really good. Was it the other axe specifically that had the chance to do? Yes, it was. I presume that was either darkness or... I presume that was darkness? Darkness is usually purple. I'm missing at least one lamp, otherwise it would have lit up. Oh, there's a ladder there that I didn't spot right away. Silly me. Yeah, my eyesight's not always the greatest. It's like hyper specialized for like weird polygons and nothing else. My word. It's one of my people. I see now. They're like suicide bomber Skaven. Not the button I meant to hit, but you know what? It works. That's a little too well. Yeah, like when I say weird polygons, that does also cover, like, seams and Z fighting. A seam is a gap between two polygons, and Z fighting is an overlap between two polygons. So yeah. I just need the yellow paint. No, I don't need yellow paint. Genuinely not sure what the best way to not instantly die to these things is. Ow. Unless I was trying with yellow paint, yeah. I don't need it to navigate. I am the one who paints. Single coin, we take those. I was performing like a worldwide, like, you know, ESA service thing. I was showing people where the future was. That's canon. Vineyard. When you kill a creature, the spirit that inhabits this weapon appears in the form of frost, causing additional cold damage. I guess that's just a modifier that can be on things. Ooh, skeleton. Ew. That hurts. Ow. Oh dear. Kill me. I don't want to pay to revive my pet. Interesting. When the rich man visited Solarius the Great, he said the more you possess, the more you will become a slave to your possessions. You discover the challenge Potion Collector. Carry at least 18 different potions at once. I should get this one passively, knowing how I play games. There was no reason to go after cold axe like that. Zero chill. Ironically, given that it's cold axe. This guy swings quickly. Luckily, seems I can stagger lock him. Is there a point to being in this part of the room? Suppose not. I guess I could drop down here. Okay, I see. It's for falling into. Also, yeah, resins don't last incredibly long, but the trade-off is that you require no particular stats to use them. Oh, wait. Heavy spear. Ooh. $25. Yeah, like you can easily like stock up to like 99 resins, it costs like nothing. And it doesn't matter what your build is, you can bring them to bear. Unless your build's unbuffable. I mean, at that point, you probably got an answer to the thing. But in most cases, resin will be nice. I'm not sure what's off to the left. Wait, what's hurting me? Was I poisoned or something without noticing it? Shoot, I was trying to get up the ladder before that thing would get me. Unfortunately, I leapt. Why am I taking damage? I didn't see any effects on me. I wonder if it was another, like, weird inventory thing. Just taking pot shots with an elemental. Not even close. Yeah, I'm taking damage again. Is there something weird in my inventory? Ew, vampire bloodsuckers. Gross. Ugh. What would those even attach to me? I guess it must have been the bad thing from the other room. Purple door up above. I guess I had to approach this one from above to get a shortcut or something. Ow. You wanna shoot the red thing? Well, Dax is like, not until you go first. Oh, now he's willing to be mauled. I think that was the time? Yeah. Assault axe. That's another axe with, or another item with freeze on it. I'm not sure if there's not that many modifiers, or if it's just that everything I picked up has either been anti-orc or soul freeze. Yeah, Heavy Spear is just a base weapon here. Which, granted, might be better than the one I've been carrying around. Interesting. Thank you for the hydrate. I must be missing something. Ow. I must be missing something. Oh, there it is. All lights on the west zone. You know what would be really nice is like... finding a piece of gear with like literally any quantity of like passive regen. Like even just 1 point a second would add up fairly quickly. I evidently never went this way. Let's find out what's this way. This is actually quite pretty. Wait, didn't it say something about light? Oh, wait, that was my axe that like did 10 more damage in light. Not sure if long corridor or if infinite corridor. Never mind, there's the end of it. It is merely long. I can't target the lanterns. Is that a floating potted plant? Oh, I don't like that these things are creepy crawly. I appear to be in a cloud of smoke. Highly poisonous smoke. Oh, there's a gate down there. I want that. I should go. But I lived. Okay, how best to get over there? I wonder if I want to get a spell that, like, makes me immune to poison. Or, like, cures it like an antidote potion would. That'd be nice. Going by number of gates, this area doesn't seem quite as big as the sewers. Though it might just be that everything's more interconnected. Gardens, it is forbidden to feed carnivorous plants. This plant looks dead. It shows that nobody looks after these gardens. Oh god. Drop spiders are like the worst thing. Please desist. Yeah, usually poison is green, and then dark is purple. You would think that dark would be dark, but it's actually kind of hard to convey dark on a display that, like, uses light. Though I'm partial to, like, a shimmering white outline around, like, a hole in the world for darkness. An event horizon? Yeah, kinda. Like, where all the light that would have been in that space kinda just gets, like, pushed outwards. I wonder if using the illumination scroll here would show anything cool. Cause, like, I do have one of those. Oh, my poor pet, kill me. should probably go back to using fire for this. Okay, I can't use shift numpad for the shift shortcuts. They dare approach me when I have more fire than they have calcium. $46 coins is my reward for that. Thank you for bodyboxing Cold Axe. Oh no. This is fine. I wonder if there's anything I could be doing to like make this area a bit easier. Like anything like obvious and low-hanging that I might have overlooked. I can technically just run underneath this guy. Off to the left, that looks like an I wanna be the guy level. Oh, there's the shop. Interesting looking individual. I'll have to check that out later. This is fine. Oh, reinforced short bow. It looks like I can use equipment that's I don't have the level for. Just not cast spells. I wonder if that's why this axe feels so slow, is that I don't have the level for it. Sharp spikes that fly off in all directions. That sounds kind of like a shotgun. Healing. I don't have any healing magic though. Heat aura could be really good. Improved crossbow. Yes, I'm probably getting healing here, if I was to guess, from environmental clues. Lewis and saving... Ooh. So wait, if a spell only costs 1, then I could just spam it. So like... just get changed right in front of the girl. Does that spell cost 2 without the row? No, it doesn't. It costs 1 without the row. Can the saving only bring it down to a minimum of 1, perhaps? So 54, that one would cost 2. I don't want to accidentally hit a shopkeeper by just casting that thing. Those stacks could be cool. Guaranteed 3 crits, that's cool. I wonder if that also would work on magic. Oh, arcane magic. Well, this seems good. I'll see, it seems to reduce the 2 cost spell to 1, but not reduce the 1 cost spell to 0. Still, that is very cool. Pun not intended. There's skeleton. Yeah, no, like... this is fine. I was just wondering if there was anything that would, like... let me deal with skeletons more easily. Oh dear. Greetings, young outsider. Greetings, old one. What are you doing here alone? I meditate far from the cruelty of this place. And what are you meditating on? How to attain the Book of Wisdom. For a long time, the book has rested in the pit. I cannot recover it, as my old bones barely hold me up. What's the Book of Wisdom? It is a magic tome that grants wisdom to its reader. I have long desired this book. Young one, you look agile and strong. For you, it should be an easy task to slide down the rope and drop onto it. What? Have you seen all the spikes in that pit? It'd be suicide to try. If you succeed, I will offer you 100 coins. That is all I have left. Please, I don't know. I see the problem. I was like, oh, timing challenge, I can do that, probably. It was not just a timing challenge. I wonder what other frost spells there are. I kind of want to keep doing the shotgun thing. Frost breath. I don't know, I kind of feel like the stalactite's probably better than that. This would be an upgrade over the staff that I'm currently using. Let's do it. Level 5 saves. No longer require the old one. Not getting a grand prize for it, but usually the case. A bunch of these I could probably just sell. I probably don't need the empty glass for anything. They don't even want it. Alright. Alright, let's see if I can't get that, let's see if I can't get that book. That's 5 extra damage per spike, like word. Huh? Weird, my phone is vibrating. Yes, Mom? Hello, Mom? Dang, Gil, where are you? Dinner's ready. Mom, I'm trapped in some sort of medieval castle full of monsters. So you're not coming for dinner? But, Mom, are you even listening to me? I said I'm trapped in a castle, that I can't get out of here or get back home. So why didn't you call to say that you're not coming for dinner, eh? Because I have no signal. In the Middle Ages, there weren't cellular towers in the towers of castles, you know? So if you had no signals, how can you talk to me now? I don't know, Mom. You're making me nervous. Alright, I'll leave you some macaroni in the fridge. When you get back, nuke it in the microwave, okay? And give up this roll game nonsense. But, Mom, listen, Mom, she hung up on me. She hung up on me. Let's see if I can call somebody else. Nothing, no signal. It's impossible that my mom could call me here. I don't get it. Let's try this one more time. Poor guy. bit OP. I really want to hit that spiky thing, and I want to take out that hive. I can't hit that spiky thing. Right, well, this is as good as it's gonna get, I think. I want to go underneath it, so... Never mind, I'm awesome. We were this close to greatness. Like, literal closeness. Okay, cool, the autosave hit me right outside. If the autosave hadn't put me right outside, I probably wouldn't be trying again. But I bet I can get this done tonight. There we go. Looks like a book. I better leave it. I will talk to the goblin first. Yeah. I don't think I can hit the spiky thing with fire magic. This is fine. Book of Wisdom. We're gonna call it there for the night. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it each and every time. Next scheduled stream is going to be on Wednesday. The game is going to be Shadow of the Colossus. Next time that I'm playing Unepic in particular is going to be on Friday. I hope you have a wonderful night. I hope to see you again. Thank you for the headphones. Good night. And thank you for the hydration.